We've heard for years about Idaho's struggles to recruit and retain foster families for children, as well as child welfare staffing shortages at the state. At one point, the shortage was so acute that the Department of Health and Welfare housed foster youth in short-term rentals. In 2022 alone, about 150 children spent at least one night and some much longer in those Airbnbs. The legislature has since banned that practice, and last year, when Governor Brad Little appointed Alex Adams to lead the Department of Health and Welfare, Adams made improving the foster system and recruiting more families his top priority. This week, producer Ruth Brown sat down with Laura Denner, administrator for the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare Division of Family and Community Partnerships, and Christine Tiddens, director for Idaho Voices for Children, to discuss recent efforts by the state to address those long-standing issues.
Administrator, I want to start with you. What is the state doing to address foster family shortages?
Yeah, so we have a lot of recruitment and retention efforts that are ongoing. We have a new contract in place with Eastern Washington University and some subcontracting agencies that are helping us really get the word out about our need for foster families. So really we have a big focus on getting foster families that are able to take in some of our older youth that are coming into the system. Some of those teens who have higher levels of needs, they're the hardest ones to place. And we really want to make sure that we have the families that are capable and willing to take those teenagers in to give them stable homes. And so those recruitment efforts are really helping us fill those gap areas and those needs.
Talk to me about what is the Department of Health and Welfare doing to offer support for those families?
Yeah, fostering is a challenge, and a lot of families aren't ready for it. And so we're really trying to find ways that both the families that are ready to foster and have foster kids, we can wrap services around them to make that easier. And then we're also trying to get our communities really involved to support the foster families when they can't foster themselves. So that looks a couple of different ways. With the foster families that are already in place, we've set up a care line that's available for foster families to call when they have a kid in their home that's in crisis. It's an actual manned clinician line that they can call any hour of the day to get assistance from the department. So that's been kind of a lifeline for those families when a child's having a hard time and it's after hours and they can't get a hold of their normal caseworker. We also have a foster family forum that's going on a monthly basis. So that's online where families can join us once a month. We bring in a department program that provides services for foster families, as well as a community partner agency that's doing something to support our foster youth and families. So we really give them the resources that are out there, and then it also brings our parents together in a place that they can ask questions, reach out to other foster families and parents who might have experienced the same thing. And what we're really seeing in those forums is that a lot of times the parents are able to answer questions for each other that even us as department staff aren't able to answer. So it's creating that sense of community for those families, which is incredible. It's a great connection for them. The other thing we're doing through our Division of Family and Community Partnerships is providing special events and opportunities for foster families within their local communities. So we started an initiative called In Your Community, and we're sending out regular communications to all of our licensed foster families as well as our kinship families, and just asking them to engage in community activities. A lot of those are things that already exist that are free to families throughout the state that they can attend and do. But some of them are really unique partnerships that we've started. We have a partnership with the Department of Parks and Rec, where we're bringing our families out to state parks and doing like STEM events or history events to just get the families out and involved in things that Idaho families love to do. So it's been really fun to wrap those types of services around our foster families.
You have a faith-based initiative. Tell me about that. How does that work?
Yeah, so Sage Dixon is a former Idaho legislator, and he has started our Office of Faith-Based Initiatives, and one of his primary goals right now is to establish a system where we're bringing in our church communities, our faith-based communities, to better support these families. So we're currently working on a platform that'll allow us to post needs that families have and allow those church bodies to come in and fill some of those tangible needs.
What happens when a family's beliefs conflict with that of the foster child's?
Absolutely. So that can look a number of different ways. Foster families don't require or can't require a child to attend church with them, but if the child would like to attend church, that can happen. We try to communicate that through the caseworkers as best we can, and there are preferences within foster homes, and those things are allowed to be honored.
Christine, did you want to weigh in? No.
Just a comment that it's really refreshing to see such a focus on community after years of just responding to crises in the foster care system. There's so much opportunity for the community to step up, and there's a bunch of people who want to do better and want to help. Either being foster families or supporting through different events or their church communities.
Speaking of doing better, the legislature changed the age for extended foster care to 23 this year. Talk to me about how that helps for folks that are unfamiliar with extended foster care.
Yeah, so when a foster child ages out of the system at age 18, traditionally they're left with very few support as they get ready to enter into adulthood. You know, they don't have the family and financial supports that traditional young adults do, and they face a whole lot more obstacles. You know, they're dealing not just with facing a lot of these new opportunities for the first time, but also dealing with healing from trauma and abuse. And they don't have somebody to just call for help. For example, getting their driver's license for the first time, or applying for a scholarship, or just managing a basic budget. And so there was an opportunity a few years ago that the feds offered states to extend the age of foster care. It's an optional choice that youth who turn 18 can elect to engage in if they meet certain requirements. And in 2021, we partnered with a group of foster youth to write legislation and create this program. And in the last 4 years, it has been so incredibly successful. I believe we're at about 3/4 of youth who have turned age 18 while in foster care have elected to participate in extended foster care in some way. We currently have over 80 young adults participating. Most of them are going to college, higher education, and living with foster families who are able to be there for all of these things that pop up as you're navigating independence for the first time. And we, after listening to youth and young adults, we realized, you know, cutting off at age 21 was still a burden. So why don't we go a little bit further, get you know, the students through college and into job placements, and make sure that they are really fully set up for that transition. And so we helped lead a successful effort, House Bill 245, that passed the legislature this legislative session. And watching those hearings was some of my favorite moments during that session. We had current and former foster youth show up, and I would say just very bravely sharing their stories about the reality of what it's like to be a teenager in care, and how much they aren't provided opportunities to get ready for independence, and how fortunate those who testified were to have extra supports and family, be it foster or, you know, kinship families being there to help as they navigate this. Their testimony brought lawmakers to tears, brought a whole room to tears. We had legislators stepping up and saying, we want to do more to support these independent services. Then we were able to celebrate signing of the bill with Governor Little and a whole room full of folks impacted by foster care. And we're looking forward to, for it to be implemented in July coming up.
Speaking of legislators doing more, they approved a whopping 63 new child welfare workers this year. That's a massive increase to the budget, the child welfare budget, that is. What do you hope comes of this budget? I'm going to start with you, but you'll both get a turn.
Absolutely. So I think what we're really looking at with those 63 positions is a whole new realm of prevention work that hasn't been possible prior. Director Tiddens already said that we've been responding to crisis, and I think these 63 positions and people make it possible that our child welfare workers aren't overworked. They're not working over 40 hours a week, hopefully. And then we're really working with families in homes to keep their kids in the biological home and keep that family intact as often as possible. So we want those 63 positions to come in and really look at when do we truly need to remove a child, and it should only be when there is a true safety risk to that child. Otherwise, we want to work with those families in their homes and keep those families whole. We know that that's when outcomes are best for the kids, is always when they're with their biological families and safe in their own homes.
Dr. Tiddens?
Yeah, I mean, this legislative session was so momentous in the forward movement that we gained with the foster care budget. To put it all out there, it was a 20% increase that the governor recommended and the legislature approved. This is during a session where budget cuts, every program was under scrutiny, and we talked a lot about deregulation, hit really hard. The lawmakers stepped up. They shared this value of what the department leadership was sharing about wanting to do better. And it was so refreshing after decades of being an advocate in this world and seeing us only react to crises. Staffing shortages are absolutely not unique or new in Idaho. You can go back to 2007 and see recommendations of needing 75 plus additional workers. 2017, we saw the same recommendations. And then as the pandemic hit, everything was just exacerbated, and we saw the highest turnover rates that we've ever seen. And that's what then was a catalyst to foster parents not having the supports needed, foster youth not having placements, and so being needed, having to go into Airbnb or sent out of the state for additional treatment and care, or just bouncing around placements because foster parents weren't ready to take on the high level of needs that kids had. And so, I think last year we really set the precedence of just hitting a breaking point of saying we're tired of talking about crises. We heard stories of foster youth falling through the cracks and young little ones staying in these group short-term rentals. And the legislature stepped up then and said no more. And we created the Office of the Ombudsman to be able to look over and be a watchdog of children's rights. And I think then it was so exciting to see the legislature continue that in 2025 with really these historic investments in foster care.
Administrator Denner, what else needs to be done?
Gosh, I think we are on the right track to supporting youth and families in Idaho. I think a huge thank you to the governor and legislature for really putting faith in the administration at Health and Welfare right now. I think Director Adams has made huge strides with those relationships and the trust that's been built, and demonstrating that we are committed to these families and these kids. And so what we can do moving forward, I think, is just continue this track, continue to demonstrate to the legislature that we're taking this seriously, that we want to make cultural change within the department, that we want to create these tangible supports for the families, and that we want to improve outcomes for these kids. I think that's the biggest part of it, is we want to see these kids successful after they've had to engage in the foster care system for whatever that amount of time looks like. And so just continuing, I guess, those efforts and continuing to stay the course and see this new plan out.
Working in foster care policy is so unique because it is full of complex systems, and the state lawmakers, the governor, the department are responsible for caring for children in their most vulnerable times. And it's really exciting to see, the governor and the department really valuing how do we do better, and seeing the legislature get on board. These historic investments that we saw in this last legislative session absolutely deserve to be celebrated and applauded. But we also need to recognize it gets us to where we should have been a decade ago, and the crises that have come up because of long-term staffing shortages and responding just on a crisis basis really lends to additional challenges and new opportunities that we can take on as a state. Some areas that I look at, with the addition of 63 new staff, we're going to need an educated workforce who are experts in social work and case management coming up. So how do we start working with universities and students at this point to get that workforce built up and ready to do even better for kids? And then, of course, I have to mention this week the federal budget resolutions. We are all eyes on the congressional packages and the potential hits to these essential social services that foster youth and families who are wanting to keep kids at home rely on. So think health assistance, food assistance, housing assistance, that on top of potential budget cuts to the federal investments in foster care mean that our state very likely will be on the hook to put a little bit more forward in the coming years as the budget resolution and the congressional budget packages move forward. So we've got a lot of work going forward, but excited by the new leadership and the lawmakers and the governor ready to just step up and say, let's do better for kids.
All right, ladies, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.